let's introduce ourselves. So Brian, why don't you go first?
Sure. So I'm Brian Lawford. I'm a principal customer experience PM. What does that mean? I work on the MCAG team or customer advocacy team, and basically working through helping with adoption, helping customers with content. If you guys have been out to adoption.microsoft.com or the tech community, my team runs both of those. So lots of good stuff in that space. And then
I'm Ben Sowers. I'm the director on the Copilot, Microsoft 365 Copilot marketing team. I do all the technical product marketing. The big thing that you're going to see in here, there's a lot of about Copilot control system. That's something that I run. So we're going to talk a lot about that, but I've also done a lot of developer platform work and actually have done sales, finance, and licensing in Microsoft in my 15 years. So I'll probably talk to you guys about a lot of things, but here today we're going to talk about adoption and deployment. So let's get rolling. So it's our 50th anniversary, which is pretty surprising. Microsoft is just slightly younger than me. Well, that's pretty impressive in its own respect. The fact that we've done as much Copilot in the last 2 years as we have is kind of mind-blowing. And seeing it from the inside and watching the sausage get made is really something else. And so hopefully we can have a good dialogue about everything that we're seeing, everything that we have seen, and things that will really honestly be very helpful and useful to you. So let's keep things moving. Obviously the vision that we have is that Copilot is the UI for AI. And what this means is that everybody has access to Copilot, and that on top of Copilot, you're using agents to do specialized tasks and workflows that make that possible. Now, in order for that vision to be a reality, there's a lot that you have to do to prepare, because I think that the mind shift that you as an organization, as an individual, as groups within that organization have to undergo to make that possible is what we're here to talk about. So just really quickly, what is the value of Microsoft Copilot, right? Why do you buy it? Why do organizations buy it? Obviously, you can say it's consistent across a lot of different UIs. You can say it's integrated into tools that you use every day, like Word, Excel, and PowerPoint, and Outlook, and Teams. It's a platform, right? Like products that we've built forever, like SharePoint. We tend to think of things both as SaaS products that we build, but also extensible products that you guys can, develop your own solutions for and customize. One of the big things, and this is really near and dear to my heart as the guy that owns CCS, is this idea that we offer enterprise-grade security and privacy and compliance and governance and all this tooling that I think really is unmatched in the rest of the business. Certainly that's I get it, very biased by my job title description of things. A lot of flexible deployment and purchasing options. We'll touch very briefly on those. And then also a lot of reporting and measurement and metrics and the things that let you see the value that you're getting out of our products. So, we talked about flexible deployment options. I actually would kind of like a show of hands. One of the things we introduced was Copilot Chat, which is a way of getting users sort of bootstrapped into the Copilot experience for free within your organizations. So if I were just to say, like, for a show of hands really quickly, how many people actually here are deploying Copilot Chat within their organizations? Okay, that's actually pretty good. That's pretty impressive. Good. That's nice to see. Because obviously, yes, you get this enterprise context chat, you get the ability to use agents, obviously either, typically under a consumption environment, right. And of course, again, with the Copilot control system, right, these agents and the way that you use these are managed within the same IT infrastructure and capabilities that we have for, the full-fledged Copilot, Microsoft 365 Copilot skill. So realistically, the flexibility that we give you is to choose between an experience that lets you, start bringing people into the Copilot journey, and then also giving those power users that sort of, heavy duty, the full-fledged experience that's really robustly integrated into everything that we do. And we'll let you decide, the pace at which that journey takes place. So, what does that journey look like? And this is where things start to get really interesting, right? The journey, as we said, is really transformative. For your organizations, you have to be able to think, not just about what are the new technical skills that I have. You have to be able to talk about this in terms of the human change that you need to bring to bear in your organization. And also, you have to make sure that your leadership is along for the ride. I don't know of any scenario, honestly, where you can say that without sort of the blessings of leadership, you're really going to be that successful in a corporation. And I think of this as somebody who's been through sales and licensing and all these other parts of Microsoft. That buy-in from leadership is so incredibly important. So we actually try to help you guys a lot in making sure that your leaders can understand what it is that Copilot can bring as value to your organization. And so we've actually got a number of, sort of a package, I would say, right, of handbooks that allows you to do this. So we've got, 3 ideas here. One is about trust in the middle there. That's again, as a CCS guy, that's really, really important to me. This idea of creating transparent leadership and what it means to lead an organization through change is also something that we want to help people understand. And then finally, you're going to get inundated, if you haven't already been inundated, by people telling you that they have AI solutions that they want to sell you. And understanding what your supply chain should look like for AI what makes sense for you and how you should trust it and think about it in your domain. We want to give you that kind of information to arm your leaders with. All right, but we also want to give you guys a blueprint, right? So there's really 2 aspects to this. One is implementation across these 4 pillars from a enablement perspective, and then the other is across these 4 pillars on the technical readiness perspective. And we're going to talk about both of those things today. And so this idea that you have to, yes, prepare. There's a lot of preparation that goes into this, from understanding your licensing to your readiness, which we will touch on, onboarding and engaging with people and making sure that you have the right tools. Making sure that you're actually getting impact from the investment that you're making and over time. And I think this 4th one is one of those things that if you think about Microsoft 365 or Teams or any of the things that have come before or up to this point with Copilot, this idea of extending and optimizing is sort of that last step. You start building agents and you start doing all these other things.
Yeah, you're
right?
not done. You're just getting started.
Yeah, so let's, this is a timeline effectively. What does that timeline look like? Well, okay, there are dates on this, but let's be very clear, right? This is not about, you have 30 days to get the first thing done. What this really is saying is that if you're moving at pace, maybe you'll get the first steps done in 30 days. There will be a 60-day phase. But the point is, there's a phased approach that you guys need to take, that we have tested, that we have worked with so many customers on, that is really essential to helping you plan. And by the way, if you're taking pictures of this deck is going to be available to everybody, so I'm not going to drain a lot of the content on the slides because I know that you'll do that instead of listening to me.
Right.
And so I want to make sure that as we go through this, you guys understand what the big ideas are on these slides, and then we can give you the deck and you can go and get deep. And also there are hyperlinks and things like that embedded into these slides that will take you to a lot of the resources that we're referencing. All right, and then once you sort of get this rolling, we also want to make sure that you're very intentional with your deployment, that you're thinking about the roles that you're deploying to, that you're deploying across organizations and across functions in the right way. So there's a lot of metrics and analysis and things like that that are going to support this. But the big point here is that we also, it's not just that we give you tooling in the control system, in Copilot Analytics, for example, to help you understand usage and licensing patterns and consumption, stuff like that. We also have a scenario library that helps you, bootstrap, or the organizations within your company bootstrap, against specific roles. And I just want to be just pause for a second in here. So by persona, right? So those personas that you saw, like HR and legal and finance and all those different guys, we actually give you rich resources on how to get started. What are the kinds of prompts you should be using? What are the kind of things that you should be thinking about? What are the problems that you can solve most quickly? Where's the low-hanging fruit when you start working with AI to do all this stuff?
How many folks in the audience have already used Scenario Library or are aware of this? Been in here before? Small handful. Okay. We're gonna blow your mind a little bit when we go through some of these pieces. But as Ben saying, a lot of the pieces as we start to roll out AI, each vertical within your company is going to use AI a little bit differently, right? The prompts are going to be different for somebody in finance than they are going to be for somebody in sales, than they are going to be for somebody in IT. And what this library is intentioned to do is to help you figure out how to get started. How do you kind of talk their talk and figure out where they are? Like, what are the prompts that you would give somebody in finance to get them started? And so that's what we hope to have come out of the scenario library for you.
Right. Okay. So moving on, I'm going to give the clicker over to you because you're going to do more talking in this section.
Yeah, so let's go through some of the technical essentials. So as Ben was saying, there's kind of two sides to this. Leadership's important. You cannot do an AI deployment without thinking through both the technical and the user side of the house. You can't do one without the other. And so you've got to go at this at the same time. You've got to be starting to think about this at the same time. So we're going to talk about the technical side of this. This is one of our grounding slides here that you'll see a couple times in this deck, but it's really thinking about what does that Copilot control system mean. We talk about security and governance, so we're going to go into that area. We're going to talk about the management controls, and then how do we measure and report on these things. And all of this is encompassed by the Copilot and the agents. So first piece of this, let's jump into the security and the governance aspects. Okay, so where do I start? Like, I'm not doing anything with Copilot yet. I've only heard all of the buzz. I'm starting to think through this. What do I do first? And again, lots of words on these slides. We're not going to drain everything, but we do want to kind of talk through what's the high level. There is an optimization assessment that is out there for you. And what this optimization assessment does is it kind of gets an idea of where are you in your journey of AI, and what are the things you need to start thinking about. So you can go out here, you can start using the optimization assessment. Handful of questions out there, 26 questions, takes you maybe 30 minutes to go through. And this will actually get you to where you understand kind of where you are so you can know where you want to get to and how do we get there. There's an AKA down at the bottom, and again, you'll have these slides. But what you're going to get when you finish this assessment is you're going to kind of know where you are. Do I have deep security concerns that I need to address? Have I already done a bunch of the readiness and the pre-work that needs to get done in order to roll this out? Or where am I? Where am I starting from? Okay, so the first thing that we talk about is how do we address internal oversharing concerns? So quick show of hands, how many people are like, oh my gosh, I need to roll this out, but something's going to leak and my documents are going to get seen? Most everybody, right? Yep, that's normal. Okay, so we've got a couple ways that we think about this. First is this concept of a pilot where we're going to go through and we're going to identify our popular sites. You know what sites in your organization have confidential data in them, right? You are IT admins. You know where some of that is. Maybe not all of it, but where some of it is. But we're looking through, okay, how do I give access to things that are going to get my immediate benefit, super short ROI, and have people start to do that while I'm going through some of my auditing. So the way we think about this is that pilot phase is identify my low-hanging fruit. Maybe I've got some sites that have documentation on them or something similar or something that my business uses already. Maybe they've got an internal SharePoint site they've got a lot of content on. Let's get that turned up. Let's get that starting to be used by Copilot so we can get the goodness out of there. Then we start to think about this deploy phase in the middle. Okay, so deploy is basically, I'm now going to start to discover where my oversharing risks are. What are the sites I need to be concerned about? And as Ben was talking about, we go through, vertical by vertical, department by department, and that's going to be where you start to have some of those conversations. What we're then going to do is start to think about, okay, what are the things that I need to restrict? What are the things that I need to be thinking about as I enable that area within my organization? And we start to think through site privacy. What are things that we can do to secure those sites, those document libraries, et cetera? Then we move into an operate phase, and the operate phase is really that we're just continuing to do that. We're continuing to go through that process of evaluating what sites are out there, making sure that we're starting to think about how do we secure that sensitive data, how do we improve those Copilot responses. And we're going to talk through some of those pieces. Okay, couple demos here. I'm certainly not brave enough to do any of this live, so everything's pre-recorded, but I'm going to talk through it with you. So the first piece of this is SharePoint and our sharing in here. Okay, so the first is thinking through the default labels on a site. So what you're going to see on the screen here is we're just going into the site and we're setting up what is that default sensitivity label. Why does this matter? If I've identified a site that is of a higher level of security, then I already know I want all of the things that are going to be in there to be maybe marked confidential or internal only. Okay, so I'm working through that process. The second piece of this is I can actually go into an individual site itself and I can mark that. So what you're seeing here, we're going into the leadership site, we're going into settings, and we're changing the privacy setting on that. We're marking that over to from a public setting over to a private setting. We're also taking a look at what our membership looks like. This is just standard SharePoint 101, right? You want to make sure that on some regular basis, you're taking a look at the memberships that are out there. Who are my members? Who are my visitors? Who are my owners? And I'm working through that process. Now, why is all of this important? Well, ultimately, we're trying to figure out what sites have we identified as high risk that we need to go ahead and start locking down, or making sure that we've got the right sensitivity labels in place so that we're protecting those documents. So this could be if you've got an R&D site or you've got something in HR. These are the sites that are common. We'll go in and mark those first. We know what those look like. This is one of the easy processes right out of the box that we can start to do that with. Okay, second piece of this is understanding how Copilot respects classified content. Okay, one of the important things that we've done as a company as we start to think about AI is security first. You heard that in the keynote. You've heard it from Satya. We've certainly said it in everything that we've presented on. But it's thinking about this concept. What does that mean? It means if I've gone through and I've done the due diligence on my site and my documents to label them, then Copilot will respect that label. As you saw in one of the demos in the keynote, we showed that if I don't have access to the document, then Copilot's not going to surface the document. Keep in mind, when we start talking about using Copilot to reason over your documents, it doesn't get some super user access. That's not the way that it works. It works in the context of the user. So if the user has access to the correct places, then that's what it's going to be able to return as a response. If I've protected those documents and I've marked them correctly, I'm thus returning what is necessary for that user. So what does that look like? Really quickly in a demo here. So we're in a Word document. We're just going to run a generate task here. So we've got a prompt up, and we're saying, hey, I want to generate a task on this document, and I get my responses. Now, the big piece about this is that first bar up at the top, that sensitivity label. Okay, so what this means is I'm informing the user, you are accessing a document that has been marked with a sensitivity label. The data that is in this return prompt is also marked at the same sensitivity label as the underlying document. That's why we start talking about, as we start to think with customers that are rolling this out, Purview comes to the forefront. Purview becomes a necessary thing to go through because you want to get into these labeled states so that therefore when your users are using AI, and we want them to do that, they are still protected, and the documents that are underneath there are protected. Okay, let's talk a little bit about restricted SharePoint search and what this is. The biggest thing I want you to take away from this slide is this is a temporary solution. This is not to be put in place and be left on. This is to get you out of the gate quickly. What does restricted SharePoint search do? Basically, what it's going to do is it's going to take all of your SharePoint data out of the indexing that Copilot's going to use. Okay? So that means your users can still query data in their emails, in their Teams, in their OneDrives. All of that's still valid. They'll still get responses. But data that is stored in your SharePoint sites is out of the mix. You, as an admin, can then go through and start adding in sites that you want that data to be parsed and put into the index. Okay? So that means I can start doing my auditing. I can figure out, hey, look, I've got this site that has some really good data in it, nothing sensitive, or I've done my labeling, I've marked everything correctly. I'm going to add that back into the mix. I'm going to let my users get results from that site. This is how we do that.
Right.
Okay? The limitations here, go ahead.
And I was going to say, it's important to also note that when you do release that site back into the wild, everything that is labeled and then indexed, the indexing inherits all the labeling, right? So it's very important to understand that the lexical indexing, the semantic indexing, all those different methods we use to make sure that Copilot can search and retrieve and RAG all this stuff is really continually reinforcing that sort of user access level labeling. So all that labeling persists entirely all the way through the retrieval system.
As you go through the process, for sure.
Right.
And so what I see with a lot of customers that we've helped with is if they want to get going quickly and their leadership's saying, show me ROI. I've paid this money for this Copilot license. Show me how this works. Show me something amazing. This is an easy way that if you haven't done anything with Purview or labeling, you can enable this and get started. And then once you go through the labeling aspects, and we know that can take time depending on how many sites you have. We're not, that's normal. Then we start to add sites in and we start to figure out what that kind of looks like. Okay, so what does the end user see when we're in this state? They basically just get a little banner across the top. I know it's kind of small on the screen, but it just tells the user, your organization's admin has restricted Copilot from certain sites. And so it limits the content that's going to get returned. So they're made aware that they're not getting the full return of everything that's out there. They're getting access to their own things and then the sites that we've added in. So let's talk about the problem summary here. Okay, so it is thinking about the fact that we want to control or at least label what our users have access to and thinking about that. Why? 3 big points here. First, we want to make sure that our users have access to the information and they don't have access to information that is beyond their role. Meaning, they don't erroneously or by some fault or accident, they have access to something they shouldn't. Okay, so we're going through that process there. The second is inappropriate sharing of content. So we're going to talk about some things in that arena as well, but making sure that they have access to the right things and they understand what they can share and how that should be shared. So the sharing concept here is not new, right? We've been able to share documents for quite some time in the OneDrive and the SharePoint arenas, but now we're saying, okay, I want to think about that, and as Copilot starts to roll out, we have a renewed interest in that. And then last in this is we talk about out-of-date or irrelevant responses, right? So Copilot's going to reason over everything in the tenant, right? So if I've got legacy data out there and I have things out there for 10, 20, 30 years, it's still going to be in the index. I'm still going to see it. So one of the things that we talk about here is what are the things that you can do in terms of cleaning up that data? Does some of that need to go to archive? Do I need to start thinking about some of those retention policies or things of that nature? All of those are in the mix.
Yep. And I would set too that there's a path that you're going to go down, right? There are some foundational things in there, right? Like
Yep.
restricted RSS and SAM, these are things that are now included in Copilot licensing. These are things that you can do that are foundational. There's also a lot of purview capabilities that are aligned either to your E3 or E5 licensing,
Yep.
depending upon what you have. Those are sort of optimized controls. So as you sort of go up that adoption curve, you're going to go from, hey, let's start with the basic stuff, or maybe even let's just start with, Copilot Chat, right? Where you don't have access to Graph yet, then move to license with RSS, then move to SAM, and then move to purview. And as you mature along that curve, and you get more sophisticated nuance, you can bring in all those other really interesting capabilities like DSPM and all these other things that we like to do.
All the other stuff that's out there. Yep.
Anyway, keep going, sorry.
All right, so this slide I put together, this is kind of the top 5 common causes of oversharing. And so when I think through this is kind of when I talk to customers, this is the first 5 things I want people to start thinking about. I'm going to go through each of these just really quickly. The first is, as you're thinking through your site privacy, as you determine your sites and you set up your new SharePoint sites, what is that default privacy set to? Is it public, or is it actually an internal private site and I need to set it accordingly? That's number 1. The second is this default sharing option to everyone. Now, what does this mean? It means when I start to share a document, when my users share a document, do they have the ability to share to everyone in the org or everyone outside of the org, or am I restricting that to a certain subset? What does that look like? Some of this is user education, yes, but also you can control some of these defaults. So setting that default option, for example, within the Microsoft tenant, I'm only allowed to share to Microsoft employees. I can't, I have to make another decision if I want to share something outside of our organization. That other decision, that's where you start to get your users to think about, if they're prompted, hey, you're going to share this with somebody in Contoso and you're in Tailspin Toys. Do you really want to do that? It makes them think, do I really want to do this? Before they just click, yep. So that's another thing in terms of the sharing option. Broken permission inheritance. What this means is that as you're moving things around within your SharePoint library, are you breaking the inheritance from top down? So you have the ability to go through and think through that. There are some reports on each of these that are out there now to look at that. The use of everyone except the external user's domain group. Okay, so what that means is I'm starting to use exactly what I was saying from the Microsoft side. I'm making sure that when people are sharing documents, do I care about them sharing documents internally as much as I care about something leaking? No. I would rather them share it with other employees because that's how we collaborate, right? But I also want to make sure that that's not the default, right? That they can share to everyone within my organization. They can't share things out by default. And then last, sites and files without sensitivity labels. You're going to hear me preach about this entire conversation around doing things with labeling and thinking through the labeling policies. It's not going to be one of those things where you get home from this conference and you go home and you flip a switch and you've got labels on everything. That's not how labeling works. But you do need to start thinking through that process of what does that look like. Okay, how do we think about this? There's a bunch of tools that are out there to help. Right, so we've talked a little bit about SharePoint, we talked about Purview. There's obviously things with Intra and our conditional access policies, meaning potentially I'm only allowing people to do things with Copilot when they're on my network, when they're on my VPN, when they're protected. Maybe that's something I can have concerns with. We've got the ability to do that. Thinking about things with PIM, Intra ID governance, obviously Defender. We talked about that in the keynote as well, and then Intune to protect those devices. So you have lots of data protection tools that are out there as you start to roll this out. You're not going in blind. You're not going in from ground zero. We're here to help through that process. Okay, let's talk a little bit about I'm overwhelmed and where do I start? How many folks have started through this journey already and thought, man, there's a lot I need to do. I don't know where to get going. Okay. This is the starting spot. Okay, so these are setup guides that are out there. These are inside your admin console right now, and there are 3 that exist. Okay, so the first is a quick start guide, the second is a Foundations Plus, and the third is Advanced Configurations. Why are these important? These are wizards that are within your admin console, and you can take a look at these, and they keep track of where you start and where you stop, and you can continue. So if you don't know what steps I need to go through to start thinking about data protection, This is a really good just overview. Okay, here's where I start, here's the things I need to think through, and you also have the ability to assign out tasks. Some of us are jacks of all trade within our company. We have to do everything. And others, we have multiple pillars of people, right? So this gives you the ability to assign out some of those things that need to get done, and you can work through these different guides. The other important part about these guides I want to bring up is that they are constantly being updated. So as we release new features, as we release new things, and we learn and we evolve, and we have new things that come into the mix, these guides continually get updated. So starting from here, and then I even have customers that come back and visit these like once a month just to see if there's something new. You know, is there a new step in here that I need to be paying attention to? Let's talk about the update channel strategy a little bit. Okay, so one of the things with, as we go through Copilot, one of the first concerns with customers was we only support the current channel or monthly enterprise channel. We do not support semi-annual enterprise channel for Copilot in terms of rolling it out. Why? Well, Copilot's moving really fast, folks. Like Copilot has new stuff that happens once every couple of weeks now. Like we've got new features all the time. So
no more 3-year release cycles.
Yeah, no kidding. So one of the things that we want to do is first to give you some of the benefits of that. So you can see some of the stats down at the bottom. Being on those monthly channels or current channels is going to give you a better experience. But there are customers that can't get into those MEC or CC channels because they have, maybe you've got a third-party plugin to Excel or something like that where you're getting support from third party. We have an option to help there, okay? So what this option is it's called App Assure. This is free. It doesn't cost you anything to engage the App Assure team. And if you have an application that requires you to be on semi-annual, this team can help you get that application into a state where it can be supported in monthly or in CC. Okay, so this is something you can go in and use. The AKA down here at the bottom right is AKMS/App Assure. Again, this is part of your license and no additional cost there. Okay, so I went through a lot of the technical aspects here and focused on that. I'm going to hand back over to Ben and let Ben go through some of the pieces with agents for you.
Thank you. Okay, so obviously we're talking about Copilot, but the other thing that's on everybody's minds is agents and managing this sort of, not just managing the agents themselves, but some of the hype around agents,
Yep.
right? And so let's come back to Copilot control system. And I think that one of the things that you're probably thinking, having seen Brian's first slide and then looked at sort of all the products and stuff
Yep.
like that, in which elements of the control system actually exist, is, wow, there's a lot going on here. How do I figure this out? And one of the things that I do sort of want to bring up, and we will talk about this in other presentations at this event, is that there's a tremendous amount of work going on behind the scenes to start rationalizing what a lot of these experiences are. So, for example, in Mac, there's now a Copilot control system blade, as many of you already know, but that we're going to start rationalizing that with the same experiences in PPAC, so that what we call, for example, the Copilot hub in the Power Platform Admin Center will become the Copilot control system in time. And you'll start to see us make things look the same and feel the same and get named the same things. But let's be fair, Rome wasn't built in a day, and it's going to take us time to get to this place. And our history of having 23 admin centers or something like that across our products means there's a lot of unscrambling to do to get to this point. Nevertheless, it helps to talk about these things as a system because it helps you understand that we do have all these controls that you can take advantage of. So let's talk about what's going on with Copilot and agents, because there's a lot of news coming out. Actually, there's a lot of news coming out this month, and you're going to hear a lot about these things in other places. So what's the issue with agents, right? How can I build agents and give people permission to build agents and drive that kind of innovation that I need in my organization, but do that in a way that is secure, that prevents the data exfiltration that Brian was talking about, and labeling is critically important, by the way. And when you get, once you get to the point where you're using Purview, for example, in DSPM, you'll actually understand that if you're not labeling things, we can't see whether or not agents have access to sensitive data. And you can actually now, in DSPM for AI or for apps and agents, you can actually go in and actually apply data labels to them through Purview if you find that there are places where data may be getting out. But anyway, and then of course you want to make sure that people are following guidelines, that you can see what people are using, whether those agents are being managed properly, whether they're adding any value to your organization. We can do all this kind of stuff today. And there's a myriad of tools, right? So this is everything that we're trying to rationalize with the control system right now. And you can see that in Power Platform Admin Center and 365 Admin Center and SAM, as you were talking about, and Purviews you're talking about, there's all these experiences that we have to pull together. But let's talk about a few of the highlights that are sort of critical. for this first step of adoption, right? So the first thing you want to do is you want to pin Copilot, right? You want to make sure that people can see where it is and that everybody understands that it's easy to get to and easy to use. I would tell you that, like, my instinct, right, when I use Copilot is just to look for it.
Look for the icon.
Look for the
Yep,
icon.
look for
First
the
thing I
icon.
do, I have a question that I need to ask AI, look for the icon.
It seems like
you know?
the icon moves a lot too.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? Yeah, admittedly, yes, it does move a lot. But, you know, this is a customization thing that you can do, and this is part of the controls that you have. You can customize the Copilot in your organization to make sure that it looks and feels and works the way that you want it to, that the right people, for example, can go ahead and, you know, access connectors, or that they can build agents, or that they can use agents, or that you can disable publishing of agents. So you want to understand, like, who in your organization, and this comes sort of the controls point and this sort of the behavior point too. Who are the right teams, or who are the right people in the right teams? Who are the right security groups that should be going out and creating agents? We give you the controls to do all these things. What's important is that you understand and that you have support from your organization to do these things in the right way, because you really can. And I can tell you that by the end of the month, there will be even more capabilities, but you can manage the entire life cycle from who gets to create agents to how they get published, where they get published, whether you can block them, who can see them. Delete is coming soon too. So all these things you can do, and we give you all these capabilities. Now, most of them exist in Mac. Some of these controls also exist in Power Platform Admin Center, but Mac really more and more is becoming sort of the starting point for agent management.
Well, this is one of the big things that a lot of you guys have been asking for, is like, hey, you know, we understand that we're going to start using agents. We see the value of agents, but it's always the, how do I wrap my arms around that, right? Hey, great, Microsoft, you got this new feature for me, you get this new agent for me. How do I put my arms around that and kind of control who can see it, who can't see it, what can they create, what can't they create? This is where a lot of this comes in that Ben's talking about.
Right.
It's really giving you the controls you need to be ahead of that rollout, so that you actually have some stability there.
And ultimately to fend off what we would call agent sprawl,
Yep.
right? And I think that there's this idea that, like, without all that kind of tooling, and oh, by the way, it's not just tooling at an individual level. Bulk commands for these things are coming as well, so that you'll be able to clean things up across an organization. And at large organizations, and I don't know who here is from truly large organizations, that kind of capability is essential. The other thing that's essential, and this is something we've heard a lot about from customers, right, is, hey, with Copilot Chat, you meet our agents. We need to make sure that we understand how to manage the cost. So managing sprawl is one important concept. But managing cost is the other important concept that you also have to be able to really get your arms around. Again, this month, right, we are now, I think if I go ahead to this one, we are actually making it so that not only can you set up meters, but you can now do departmental billing for agents. So as you start rolling agents out, you may, for example, only want the finance group to be charged for using finance agents. It's going to be, we are now able to set up billing policies based on users or groups in the Microsoft 365 Admin Center, and you can actually assign billing to specific Entra security groups, and you can use your Azure, and you can burn down Azure Mac, essentially, right? You can burn down Azure consumption for this pay-as-you-go. So this is something that's brand new. I actually have a little video that I stole from the product manager, who is also going to be talking about it tomorrow at 8 in the morning. He told me I could steal his thunder, so I'm going to let this roll. Let's take a quick look. It's a minute-long video. I wonder if it has any sound. Anyway, so this is billing for Copilot. It probably does have a voiceover to it that I didn't go, but anyway, so you can track usage. Shoot, I really thought there was audio with this. I thought you guys would get like a big sizzle, you know?
This is what you get for taking it early.
Yeah, exactly, right? This is my fault for stealing somebody's slides. But yes, so now there is, within the billing usage thing, you can set up individual billing policies. One of the things that you're noticing, right, is everything is now being moved from into a Copilot blade. One of the things that's going to also come in May is that the actual agent management tabs are going to move from the integrated apps experience into the Copilot experience, and it's going to be called agents and connectors. So it's like all these little changes to information architecture that we're making all over the product are starting to, like, trying to make the life of an administrator a little more rational, a little easier, a little more consolidated. So, you know, this concept of consolidation under that Copilot menu is becoming more and more apparent. And you can actually see the other thing in there is prompt management. So organizational prompt management is something that we are also about to GA. sort of call an audible on this one right now, but it's in public preview right now. It's a new control that will allow you to determine which groups see which prompts in the prompt library up in the front of Copilot. So it's a nice way of, if you were to go back to the role-specific stuff that we were talking about earlier and what prompts you might want to give to people, now as an admin, you can actually take the guidance from that and assign those prompts directly into the product, right? And make it so that it's not just about suggesting that people do these things. You can actually give them the things to use and put them in the product.
And I think
that's a nice touch.
Yeah, the big piece about this from a billing perspective, again, we're listening, right? There's lots of good feedback. There's lots of good things coming as we start to roll this out. And I want you to take that to heart. We are hearing what you guys are feeding us, and we're working diligently to put a lot of that into play. This was one of those things where we start to roll out agents and you go, well, how do I bill the certain departments correctly? How do I determine who's going to use that agent and who has to pay the bill for that agent being used? What you just saw in that sizzle video is really that whole concept of now being able to compartmentalize and departmentalize the billing structure around that.
All right, and then the last piece, obviously, is, hey, you set up billing, you've got things assigned to people. Are they actually using it? Are people hitting their limits? Do you need to increase or decrease your spend? Are you spending too much? So there is reporting that allows you to actually go in and look at the consumption that you're seeing for each one of these meters. Over time, this will be aligned to dollar spend. Right now, it's more message spend. But we're moving as fast as we can to make sure that the reporting and the capabilities that we give to you, both on the lifecycle management and the billing management side of things, are as closely aligned as possible. And so a lot of great features coming out, a lot of great things happening starting now and really into the next 6 to 8 weeks around exactly these things.
Lots of good stuff in that space.
And I will just say also, at Build, there's going to be a big CCS blog. I'll just throw this pitch out there, so you're going to see a lot of other capabilities that we're going to announce, probably also recapping some of these things. All right, back to you.
All right, so we talked a little bit about the technical side of the house. We talked about the things that we need to do with Purview and the document labels. We've now talked about the agent side of the house and what we can do to help our users start to use those agents. But as I said, this is a multi-pillared approach, right? You cannot just do the technical aspect of this. You have to also enable your users. How do we do that? How do we go through the fact of you've got these users that are clamoring for this technology. How do we give them the right things to help them have what I always call the aha moment, right? How do I get them to use a prompt? And all of you in the room, if you've started using AI, you have this aha moment where you go, wow, I didn't know it could do that. And that becomes okay, what else can it do? That becomes that process. We want to get the users to that. We want to get them to aha. And so one of the things that we talk about is how do we think about that? A couple things on this slide. And as I said early on, this is my team focuses on a lot of this user enablement side. There's a couple ways that we help you do this. One, invest in a champions team. This is not specific to AI and Copilot. This is anything that you're rolling out, major product within your organization. You need a champions team that you trust. These are your cutting edge folks that want the latest and greatest shiny red ball. That's them. Those are your champions. And they're going to be within the different areas of your organization. You'll have champions in your finance department. You'll have champions in your sales department. You'll have champions in your C-level departments. That's important because what those champions are going to do for you is they're going to help to make your job easier. They're going to field some of those questions that come out of their individual areas so that everybody doesn't call your desk and ask stuff of you, okay? The champions are you really want to lean in and start to think about how do you build those. And we do have some sessions here this week that will kind of go a little bit deeper on those champions teams. The second piece of this, if you haven't figured it out by now, Copilot's moving fast. Copilot is definitely one of those things that in my career in IT, it's always continuous learning. We always talk about don't be a know-it-all, be a learn-it-all. Continuous learning is something that you have to enable and empower your users to do. You have to make it where they have access to the right materials and they're empowered to go and learn things, right? Because again, things are moving quickly. So getting them enabled and giving them the right access to resources. The last on this is a community of practice. Okay, so community of practice can mean something as easy as I've got a Viva Engage community set up. I have somewhere for people to go and ask questions and learn things. You as an IT admin or you, whatever your role is within your company, I promise you're not going to know everything about AI and Copilot, especially as it pertains to those verticals. So how do we disseminate that information? How do we get that to the right people? We create a community of practice. We give them a location. I don't care where this is. This could be Viva, this could be a team site, this could be SharePoint. Whatever you want to do is perfectly fine by me. Just do it. So you've got to get this community of practice established so that they have somewhere to go to ask questions and they have somewhere to go to interact with their peers. Okay, so we talk about the land and expand pieces of this. There's 4 pillars that you'll see on this. First is awareness. You can't just come in this from grassroots. It's just not going to work that way. We've all been playing with this for many, many months now, and it's super exciting. But you have to think through, what is the awareness? What is the vision for my company as they're starting to roll out AI? And does that vision change depending on the vertical within my company I'm talking to? Again, as I said, your finance team, your sales team, your back office team, they're going to use this a little bit differently. You've got to figure out what that looks like as you start to roll out to those individual areas. A generic message of like, hey, listen, we've decided we're all in with Copilot. Not going to work. Copilot Champions launch. Thinking about who those champions are and getting them involved early. What I always tell people is, you're thinking about this champions program, figure out what the carrot is. People like free stuff. Give them some free swag or something. Maybe you're thinking about, maybe it's an ice cream social. I don't know. But think about something that you're rewarding these champions for helping you and that they feel empowered. Sometimes within our organization, it becomes, hey, if you want to come speak at a conference, maybe it's part of the champions that we're choosing from to do that. They've shown that drive that they want to help to further our adoption or our rollout. Second is the engagement. Okay, strategic engagements by org and by role. Again, sometimes you've got kind of that 101 that you can do, but the more time that you spend figuring out in that scenario library what prompts are going to be effective for that vertical in your company, the more successful that's going to be. One of the talks I've given before is, I'm not in the finance world. I've been in IT my entire career. I understand a little bit about it, but I can't talk the talk of a finance individual. I can use my scenario library to figure out what prompts are already out there that we've curated from finance companies, and I can start there with, hey, did you know you can do XYZ with Copilot? This is part of your job, part of your role. That's important. Showcasing your success stories. As you start to roll this out and your users have their aha moments, promote those. Show those to other folks within that vertical and within your company, because that then helps other people get to that faster. It helps them understand where they can start. And then thinking through surveys. Like, you've got to poll them, figure out what's going on, figure out what they're missing, figure out what they need to learn. In terms of measurement, Ben talked about some of the measurements that we've already got that are out there. There's lots of stuff you can measure on. What types of things are they doing with Copilot? How much are they using it? What types of agents are they using? What does that look like? Measurement's key, because that then gives you an idea of where do you need to spend time. If you've got certain departments within your organization that are using Word, for example, okay, maybe I'm trying to help understand what I can do with Word. I'm going to go to that department, and I'm going to ask them with a survey, hey, what are you guys doing with Word? What prompts are you using? What's the cool prompt of the day? One of the things that I also encourage you is, when you start talking to these folks, ask them what their coolest prompt is that they've heard, right? Sometimes it's very simple. Sometimes it's complex. It depends. Mine is always, I heard this, I guess it's a couple of months ago now, but there was a prompt that was given to me that said, look at all of my my texts, my emails, and my calendar and things like that, and if I was going to be a superhero, who would my superhero be? That's simple. It's stupid, right? It doesn't solve anything, but it's comical. And then the end users are going to go, oh, I didn't know we could do that. Aha moment. Now we've got where we need to be. Last is the piece of management. So reacting to that data. It's one thing to survey your audience. It's one thing to survey your users, but you have to show them that you're reacting to that. You have to show them that you're taking that feedback and you're working on that. You're building more content for them. Maybe you're doing extra trainings for them. You're putting together documentation, whatever that might be. But don't just ask them questions and don't action on it, because then they're going to stop doing surveys. Okay? So those are the 4 big pillars that we think about in that aspect and things that we need to do. I talked about building that community of practice. So we do this with Viva Engage. Again, I don't care how you do this. I just want you to do it. I've had companies that will do this with, they've got a Teams team set up, and they put the right channels in it, and they ask questions in there. We have customers that do this with Viva Engage, and it's full-blown. They can come in and ask questions. A lot of the Viva Engage pieces of this is, again, you're trying to create a location that is safe for them to come and share their ideas and share their challenges that they're having with Copilot, and what are the things that other people have learned. You're trying to make that learning organic for them, where they've got kind of a one-stop shop they can come to and get some of that. So you'll see a lot of this in the Viva Engage arena. Skilling experiences. As I talked about, you're going to want them to start to be able to learn a lot as they go through this process, right? So there's a lot of things in the skilling aspect of this to think through. We have a Copilot Academy that's out there that they can start to use. So this is just the basic, this is Copilot 101. So if you haven't done things with Academy, I encourage you to go take a look at that. It's structured content. It's very easily consumable. We're trying to keep the videos and the pieces into short format so that you can grab a couple of minutes. It's not meant to be hours of just sitting in front of a computer watching videos. Doing things with Microsoft Learn, so there is some on-demand training and stuff out there. I think we're still in the Copilot of the Month training and skilling initiatives right now, so there's lots of good stuff that's going on in the Learn arena. And then Copilot Lab, so this is another area that we can go to and start testing out some of those capabilities, figuring out what those prompt skills look like. The biggest thing that I think about this is we're now moving from the concept of a search engine to AI, right? So if you think about how we all operated 12 months ago, it was I go to Bing, I type in 3 or 4 words, I put some connector words in there, I try to figure out what I need to tell it. Now I just go ask in real language, and many times I'll pull my phone and just talk to it. Hey, I'm trying to find XYZ thing. One of the things that comes out of that is you've got to start to help users get past that, right? If you're in the IT org, we like the shiny red ball. That's what we do, right? That's our job. But for users, it's getting them to understand it's a shift, right? Because it's now become one of those things where before it would be, okay, I've got this process that I walk through. Now I want to default to Copilot. I'll give you a perfectly real-world example that I used on this. So I'm the content lead for this conference. I put together all the sessions that you guys are going to and kind of put those in order. One of the things that we needed to do was to gather all the email addresses of all the speakers, okay? So all of our speakers are in an Excel list by their name, and I've got all that in the list. In the past, what I would have done is start searching on those users, finding their emails, figuring out where they are, plug them into the spreadsheet, figure all that stuff so I can do mail merges and all that good stuff. That's how I work. What I have to shift my brain to is I went to Copilot and said, hey, I have this Excel file with these names in it. Can you look in my gal and go grab the primary emails for all of these and put them in a column for me? Done. Minutes versus hours. So it's a shift of that, and you've got to get your users to go through that. That's where these labs and the learning and the academies get into the mix for you. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the measuring value and extending those AI scenarios here. Okay, so we're now in this third column. So we talked about security and governments. We've talked about those management controls that are in play. And now we're going to talk about how do we measure some of these things and how do we report on them. Because again, just paying for Copilot licenses and not using them doesn't do us any good, right? Our leadership wants to know, well, what did I get out of this? So we're going to show you some of the reporting pieces here. Copilot Analytics. Okay, so what this is it is a combination of things. It is first the admin center. It's the ability for you to see those agents, see that usage that's in there, see those adoption trends. As I've already talked about, if you're focusing on certain applications, how do I tell what parts of my organization are already using those so that I can go and ask them those questions? I can go figure out what they're doing correctly or they're starting to adopt. And the inverse is also true. If I'm seeing that there's not a lot of usage in PowerPoint and Copilot in PowerPoint, maybe I'm asking that question. Hey, why does this not work? What are things that you're trying to do that you're not able to do? Or is there a scenario that you're trying that doesn't work? Copilot Dashboard. Again, exploring how AI transforms the way your teams work. So looking through the stuff that's in that dashboard, and then also looking at some of those advanced reporting or the insights that are there, so that we can see what is the value of that and what is the value of those agents upon my business processes. So how does this work? Data visualizations and reporting. So we've got all three of these areas across the top. In the middle, we're looking at our organization data, we're looking at graph data, our usage data, and our agent usages. This is all also still underneath our security, privacy, and compliance boundaries, and we have the ability to utilize third-party business data, right? So we can bring that into the mix and do some reporting on that as well, although that's a manual upload process. Okay, so we have the ability to look at a bunch of this stuff within each of these areas here. How do we see the adoption trends? So we can look at the licensing and the activation status by our groups. We can see who has licenses, who is in a prepared state. We can look at the agent billing that Ben already talked about, some of the new stuff we're doing in the billing aspects, and look at those spend rates, see what the performance and the control speeds are. And again, so that we can get an idea. Are there certain organizations that are really adopting this, and I can figure out how to amplify that. And then looking at my usage and adoption trends over time. So I can figure out, is it just the initial red shiny ball, like, hey, this is a really cool product, I want to use it? Or am I seeing that trend where it just kind of continues to go up or hockey stick? Or is it just they try it once and they didn't figure out the value of it, they don't see the value in it, and they stop using it? So all of these things are out there that you can take a look at and see in those pieces. Exploring how AI transforms the way that you work. Again, figuring out how your users are using Copilot. So this dashboard that you see, and I know this is kind of a smaller graphic, but what we're showing here is the active number of users that are out there, and then what are they using? Again, what you're seeing on the screen is, how many people are using Copilot within their meetings? How many are using it within Teams chat? How many are using it within email or documents? What are the benefits that we're getting from this? This is great data to take back to your leadership to say, hey, look, we made this investment in this product. Here's what we're getting out of it. I've gotten people that are using this, and I can see what that looks like. We can also see how those workplace patterns or the collaborations shift as we're starting to use AI, right? Because again, it becomes there's always this question that I get of, well, is this going to eliminate my job? No. What this is going to do is make it where the mundane parts of your job, you can farm off to AI to get done. I thought this when we started rolling out. You probably did the same. It was kind of one of those where you go, okay, what are the things that I can make AI do that I spend a lot of time on? Sometimes that's scheduling meetings. The example that I give folks is I start my day in Copilot by asking Copilot, what should my day look like today? Like, tell me all the emails that are high priority that I need to react to because we work in a global company. We have folks that are, they're up all hours of the night in my world, right? So it's kind of one of those where when I start my day, there's other folks that they're halfway through their day or further. I start with, where do I need to start my day? What are the things I need to focus on? What are the high priority meetings that I need to attend today? And hey, can you prep me for those? What documents do I need to be aware of as I'm going into this meeting? What relationships do I have with the people that are attending the meeting? That's how I start now. So instead of me waking up in the morning, as I'm going through my coffee, I'm asking Copilot how to start my day. So I'm thinking about that pattern and that collaboration shift, whereas before that might have been 2 hours of my morning trying to figure out what my day looks like or my organization. So now that's kind of done for me. Measuring the sentiment about Copilot. So again, one of the things I talked about surveying and sending out surveys to your end users. This is another one of the things that is important is to think about, are they actually using this? Are they getting value out of it? And as I said before, trying to identify the areas where your users are using it, getting that value, seeing that ROI, versus where are there some gaps? And maybe that's where I need to go host a training. I need to put some documents together or something like that, okay? So lots of good stuff in the reporting there. There's 2 sections right now in the Copilot usage report. So you will see both the readiness section and the usage section. The readiness is to give you an idea of your what your users are ready for Copilot licensing. If you haven't assigned those yet, it gives you an idea of what's out there. And you can see with the box that's getting highlighted. So how many people are actually ready for licensing? They're in a good state. And then the usage section is what we were just talking about. So being able to go through and look at what are they using, how are they using it, what are they doing with it. So let's talk about service plan management. So I talked about earlier on that we have to continue to work on this. We have to continue to think about this. I'm not going to drain this slide, but what I want you to take away is the circle on the right-hand side is a circle. It's continuous. So you're asking them questions, you're taking their feedback, you're doing things with incidents, you're publishing those success stories, you're thinking about where are those aha moments or those wins, you're working through roadmap, what organization's going next within my company. I'm thinking through the risk mitigation pieces, and I'm working through those performance aspects. This is an ongoing process. This is not different than any other application that you've deployed. It's just faster. Like Copilot just iterates so quickly through this in terms of that process. Okay, so the big thing of this is we do have an exciting future ahead. There's lots of good stuff that's going on in this space. It is moving rapid. And what I want you to take away from these last handful of slides is we're here to help you. There's a lot of aspects, there's a lot of content, there's a lot of sites that you can use to get started. Don't think about this as, oh my gosh, I don't know where to go, I don't know how to start. We're trying to give you, at least in this session, and there's many others this week that will give you some additional data that's around there. Let's talk about some of those tools really quickly. First, if you have licensing, you have access to Fast Track. This is something that you can go and you can work with the Fast Track team. The Fast Track team is the ones that develop those wizards I talked about earlier. So if you need deeper guidance on how to go through these deployment options and what to think about, they can help through that process. If you've not done anything with Purview yet, and you need help with, I don't know where to start with Purview, Fast Track can help you get started there. Adoption.microsoft.com. How many folks have been out to adoption.microsoft.com? Quick hand raise. Yep, handful. Okay. This should be your new best friend. Go bookmark this today. Take a look at it. There is lots and lots of good stuff out here, and there's lots of content that you can utilize and rebrand. So we have Copilot success kits that are out there. They have some of those initial templates that you can use for emails, decks that you can use for training, concepts of how to go through it and do this. You don't have to start from ground zero. We've done a lot of the heavy lifting for you already. And I talked about community and the importance of that community of practice. If you're not part of the tech community already, you should be. This is a good area for you to go in and ask questions. I'm not going to have all the answers. Ben's not going to have all the answers. But I assure you, if you go out in this tech community, you ask a question, somebody out there is going to have an answer that's in your industry or in your vertical. So if you haven't done this, please pay attention there.
And the blogs and tech community, you know, we write those. We announce a lot of news in that community, and if you ask questions, we will answer. Like, you know, I probably author a blog a month on CCS, and if somebody asks me a question about it, I reply. So it's also a great way to get in touch with Microsoft people too.
100%. Yeah, so we're paying attention to that. It's not just there are folks from within the industry that can answer questions that are maybe industry specific, but we're also watching that. Like, we're paying attention to those asks, and a lot of the stuff that happens in the community drives what type of articles that we need to go write. Like, we look at what the questions are and go, oh, yeah, we should probably write something on that. So we work through that. So two different URLs that are here, and then you've got a link around the learning and the community channel, and then obviously the Mondays at Microsoft. That's where we do my team does a blog basically every Monday live, and we work through some of that content that's out there. Okay, we are right at.
Before you get asked for feedback, I want to ask you a question.
Yep.
What was your aha moment?
My aha moment was coming back off of vacation, being out for a week, and I'm a big proponent of, I like to travel places that Microsoft can't get in touch with me. Like, I go on cruise ships or places where cell phones don't work. It's just my strategy. Use it if you want to. But coming back from that, the first day back is usually overwhelming. It's usually a day of going through emails and calendars and how many people pinged me. And it was just a quick prompt. Hey, I've been out for the last 7 days. Tell me where I need to focus. Tell me what items require my attention, or tell me things where people said my name, or I got to sign. Because if you're on vacation, you know you have to sign stuff while you're in meetings, right? Like, if you're not there, you're it. So I asked Copilot, tell me all the things that I need to be aware of. And within just a couple minutes, I had at least a good starting spot. That was my aha. What about you?
I think my aha was doing competitive analysis, actually.
Yeah?
Like, yeah, I felt that two things, two combined ahas. One is to use it for that scenario, but B, also to write really precise prompts. Like, I didn't just say I want to do competitive analysis. I named 8 competitors. I named 6 different characteristics that I wanted to understand. And it threw out a matrix at me that was so good in 2 minutes that I was like, oh, I just saved myself like 3 days of work. It was kind of mind-blowing. And that was certainly my aha. And I mean, the other thing, of course, is aha, I checked it all too, right? Like, I think there is always this. I checked the box. I got the click. I checked all the references and made sure that it was right. But man, doing that in 10 minutes instead of doing it in 3 days or whatever it was, like, it was mind-blowing. Yeah.
Okay. With that, I think we're right on time. We've got a couple minutes left. So thank you very much for attending.
Thanks, folks.
Hopefully you got something good out of it.
Thank you
very much.